I arrived in Miami on a breathless afternoon, the air heavy with sweet humidity and promise. The chartered Gulf Stream slid to a halt on the tarmac, and I stepped off in 9-inch red stilettos and a skin-tight, human leather black dress. My name for this story is Lilith Carlyle, though once I went by 10,000 other surnames, each whispered in fear. Today, I came for lawyer Caroline Davis, rising star of Davis and Ortega LLP, a woman whose immoral brilliance sparkled wonderfully bright in law and order's endless dark corridors. From the godless courthouse's back gallery, I watched her in action. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, casting fractured rainbows across her tailored navy business suit. She cross-examined a trembling young witness with surgical precision, turning every hesitation into doubt. The jury leaned forward, enthralled. Her voice was soft steel, her gaze unblinking. When the verdict of not guilty was pronounced in the chamber, she did not flinch. Not one muscle betrayed the storm she'd stirred. I smiled inwardly. Sheer perfection. She slipped into the hallway afterward, her heels clicking a measured rhythm on marble floor. Clerks and bailiffs parted ways for her, as if compelled by fear by her reputation. She paused to answer hushed congratulations from colleagues, her lips curved in polite restraint. I fell into step behind her, my crimson heels drumming a quiet menace from behind. Every step she took resonated in the empty spaces between her certainty and my design. Outside, the Floridian sun hammered down, and she shaded her eyes with her delicate hand. I stepped forward, extending a card embossed in charcoal linen. "Ms. Davis," I said, voice a silken caress. "I'm Lilith Carlyle. I represent special clients with unique challenges. I believe your talents would be of tremendous use to both of us." She turned, steely eyes flicking to the card, then to me. "I'm listening," she said, voice calm. A few short words. This was the moment. She swung wide open the gates of her fate. We arranged a meeting that evening at my penthouse atop the Prism Tower, 72 floors above Biscayne Bay. When she arrived, the elevator doors opened onto opulent marble floors and walls of glass. The skyline lay before her like a thunderstorm of electric light. I offered champagne. She chose a glass of water, holding it in her slender hand. She set the flute of water aside and watched me intently from across the room. "Your record is unmatched," I said, pouring myself a cocktail. "But I have a case so vast, so complicated, that it will eclipse every triumph you've known." I handed her a dossier bound in black leather and blood-red lettering. "Olympus Industries. Embezzlement, fraud, bribery. 25 years if convicted. They've buried evidence under layers that would crush any ordinary defense. Yet I believe you can dismantle their fortress." She opened the dossier, brows lifting as she scanned inner pages. "Why me?" she asked softly. "Because you are unknown and untainted," I replied. "Unwavering. And because I can offer you partnership in my firm, resources beyond imagination, secrecy guaranteed, prestige unrivaled, and the notoriety unmatched anywhere in the world." She closed the dossier and studied me, her face a mask. "No moral or ethical objections," I added. "No knuckle-biting conscience. You will do whatever it takes. And I mean whatever it takes." A tiny, noticeable tremor passed through her, like a leaf in a gale. I sensed the faint crack in her armor. "Send me the contract and I will let you know," she said matter-of-factually. I handed her a sleek card etched with my email. "Consider it done. But know this, I never wait long." She slipped out as silently as a shadow, dossier clutched to her chest. Behind her retreating form, I inhaled the tasty tang of victory. The hunt had just begun. In the hours after our meeting, Caroline Davis did what she always did. She dove into research. Late into the night, her condo on Las Olas Boulevard glowed with laptop screens, spreadsheets, and legal briefs. Her boyfriend, Mark, a public defender with a gentle heart, sent texts, worried she was overworking. She replied with curt assurances. "Almost done. Love you." But she wasn't almost done. She was just getting started. She was already in my web. At midnight, I text her phone. "The contract is ready. I'll deliver it at sunrise." I smiled. She frowned at the message. Contract. Sunrise? She scrolled back through our emails. Nothing there. She glanced at the clock. 3:02 a.m. She debated replying, but deleted the text instead. The uncertainty ignited her curiosity. Her hunger was turned on with the message I'd planted in her mind. At dawn, a sleek black envelope waited on her doorstep, sealed with crimson wax stamped in the shape of a coiled serpent. Inside lay the contract. 1 page, black ink on white paper, simple clauses: partnership, resources, anonymity, and a final clause: signature in blood. She shivered, but only with the anticipation of signing it. Later that morning in court, I sat behind her again. Olympus Industries' lead counsel paced like a caged tiger, unaware of the trap tightening around his neck. I whispered through court shadows. Press him on the audit trail. Show no mercy. Caroline rose with a confidence I'd fanned into flame. She stepped forward, voice clear. "Mr. Gerard, on page 47 of your internal memo, you state that funds were transferred on June 12th. Yet the ledger you submitted in Exhibit G shows the transfer occurred on June 10th. Which is correct?" The corporate counsel's colour drained from his face as he fumbled. The jury leaned in. Caroline's gaze sharpened. She held his eyes until he cracked. His answers unravelled. I gasped with silent glee, her brilliance and my design in perfect synchronicity. After court, Caroline retreated to our agreed meeting place, a private lounge on the 48th floor. The bartender set 2 flutes of Dom Perignon before us. Moonlight slanted through glass, fracturing into prisms of promising rainbows. "You were extraordinary today," I said, swirling my glass. She pinched the bridge of her nose. "I feel like a monster." She took a sip anyway, out of respect, even though she was not a fan. "Monsters always win," I whispered. "And then they sleep soundly." Her gaze seethed with conflict. "I'm exhausted." I leaned forward, voice soft. "Sign the contract, then rest peacefully." I slid the parchment across the table. She reached for it, fingers brushing mine. Her pulse spiked under my touch. She hesitated, then shook her head. "Not yet." I nodded, tipping my flute. "As you wish. But remember, every moment you delay, Olympus tightens its security. This window will close. And soon?" She pocketed the contract and drank deeply. Outside, the city pulsed like a living heart. Inside, she trembled on the edge of damnation, and not even realizing it. That night, she dreamed of numbers bleeding off spreadsheets, the cries of victims screaming through marble halls. I was there, whispering in her ear, "They deserve the best representation. You deserve an unending amount of money and power." She woke screaming, the taste of iron in her mouth. Her phone lit up with Mark's number at 3:17 a.m. She didn't answer. The contract waited, red seal staring. And I waited too. The morning of the 3rd hearing dawned grey and heavy with anticipation. Caroline strode into the courthouse like a warrior. Black suit, white blouse, hair pulled back in a steel-tight bun. Olympus counsel scouring across the aisle, his confidence eroded by her relentless questioning. I sat behind her in a shadow, licking my wet red lips in anticipation of the slaughter to come. The judge called the court to order. "Proceed with the defense, Ms. Davis." She rose, exhaled, and presented Exhibit L, an email chain between CEO Fontaine and his CFO outlining illicit payoffs. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Fontaine's attorney slammed a fist on the lectern. "Objection! This is hearsay!" he snarled. Caroline's eyes gleamed. She advanced. "Hearsay?" she intoned. "Or direct evidence of intent?" She let the silence stretch into an oppressive stranglehold. "Your Honor, this email was obtained through legal subpoena. It speaks for itself." The judge, usually austere, paused, then nodded. "Exhibit L is admitted." The jury leaned forward, riveted. I tasted the animal kill thrill of her victory, but she faltered for a split second, her lip trembling. I pressed closer in her mind. "Finish them. Don't hesitate. End them now." She thought about opting for mercy, to protect a low-level executive who'd cooperated. Then she recoiled. Mercy was an unneeded liability. She pressed on, exposing every hidden account, every offshore shell. The jury watched, mouths open in shock and awe. By midday recess, Olympus's defense lay in ruins. In the hallway, cameras snapped as she exited. Reporters shouted questions. "Ms. Davis, are you a ruthless shark or a sacred savior?" She smiled politely, but said nothing. Her mask, crafted from steel, she slipped away in silence. Her thin, pale hands trembled as she tucked stray hairs back behind her ear. I met her at the elevator. "Monsters sleep," I whispered. She closed her eyes briefly. "I can't sleep," she admitted. "That's because you've embraced your true power," I murmured. "Power demands absolute sacrifice." She inhaled, glancing at the card on my desk, the contract. "I want this," she said, voice soft and resolute. She took the parchment, traced the serpent seal with a fingertip, and sunk onto the plush sofa in my office lounge. With a ritualistic deliberation, she uncapped the elaborate penknife and pressed it to her finder. I watched the ink bleed, a drop of her own blood mingling with the black, then felt the contract vanish into the void between us. She exhaled in defeat, pale as the moon overhead. "Welcome," I whispered, extending my hand. She took it. The air shifted. A wind rose in the room, tearing at her hair. The city lights outside flickered. She was mine. Forever. Signing that contract changed everything. Caroline Davis became a storm of merciless, calculated cruelty. The next morning in court, she dismantled the remaining prosecution witnesses with emotionless precision. Even the judge, a paragon of restraint, bit his lip at her overt ferocity. I leaned back, savouring the delicious dismantling of the mere human dopes. Back at her condo, she found a message scrawled on her bathroom mirror in lipstick. "Sold." She stared at it, every muscle frozen in place. Then she burst into tears, the first real emotion she'd felt in days. Mark arrived seconds later, panic on his face. He found her on the floor, shaking uncontrollably. "Caroline!" he cried, kneeling beside her. She looked up, eyes red and hollow. "I did it," she whispered. "I signed it." He reached for her. "Signed what?" She didn't have the strength to explain. She only wept harder, and he held her until her sobs drenched him completely. That night, I came to her dreams. Again. She stood in an endless courtroom painted in blood red. The jury was full of people she had once defended, now accusing her of betrayal. She sat at the defense table, trembling. I appeared in the witness stand, my body cloaked in a dark black suit and a crimson tie. You belong to me, I told her, my voice firm. She looked down, saw chains wrapping around her wrists. She pounded the desk. No, I'm stronger than you, she cried. I smiled a knowing smile. You only think so, my beloved. She gasped awake, heart hammering. The air in her condo felt too thick to breathe. She left her bed and stood at the window, looking down at the glittering city. The world she had conquered and damned with a single signature. She whispered to nobody, I'm losing myself. But she wasn't losing herself. She was finding the darkness that lived within her all along. Days blurred into nights. Caroline's work accelerated. High-profile cases, glossy magazine covers, keynote speeches on ethical advocacy that reeked of laughable irony. She'd severed ties with Mark. He couldn't bear what she'd become. She skipped breakfast, ate only when forced, eyes sunken and body thin and skeletal. I prowled her mind like a cat circling prey. Remember your promise? I hissed when she hesitated in front of the bathroom mirror. You're mine. Do my bidding. One afternoon, she faced a new opponent, a defense attorney representing a young migrant accused of armed robbery. The kid was frightened, mumbling apologies. Caroline rose, calm fury in her voice. You took a gun and threatened people, she said. You thought no one would catch you, and now you claim poverty made you do it? She leaned in. Poverty doesn't justify violence. A hush fell. The young teen trembled. The jury exchanged glances. I watched Caroline's lips curl in a smile too sharp for a savior. She pressed on until the boy broke down. Guilty spelled out on the jurors' faces. The sentence, 15 years to life. Caroline walked out alone. Outside, the sun shone brightly, but she didn't see it. Only the unseen chains on her wrists and legs. By the time the Olympus verdict loomed, Caroline Davis was a legend and a pariah. The media circus had invaded her life. Late-night talk shows, podcasts, endless interviews. Each spotlight removed her further from the woman she'd been. I watched from the wings, savoring the alluring final act. Opening statements in the federal courtroom reeked of anticipation and fear. Caroline rose to address the jury. Her voice, once warm, sang like freshly polished steel. She promised to expose the rotted core of Olympus Industries. No one doubted her unrelenting zeal. I hovered behind her mind, prodding, unleash the full fury of the truth. Let them taste every sordid detail, reveal all. And she obeyed, unveiling documents that implicated not just executives, but senators and judges, all complicit in illegal bribes. Gasps erupted. Olympus counsel's face drained pale. The judge pounded his gavel to restore order. The afternoon sun filtered through courthouse windows. Caroline pressed her advantage, each question a knife that carved away the prosecution's resistance. I leaned forward, heart pounding with wickedly primordial pride. When the jury returned, Foreman spoke in a trembling voice. We find the defendant guilty on all counts. Silence, then uproar. Cameras snapped. Caroline's gaze flicked to the ground, but I felt her triumph, cold, hollow, utterly unstoppable. That evening, she returned to the penthouse at Prism Tower. The city lights lay below like a field of stars she no longer recognized. I stood behind her proudly at the window. You did it, I whispered. She exhaled a ragged breath. At what cost? I produced the final parchment, her soul's ledger. She traced the wax seal, serpent coiled tightly. Her quivering hand held the crimson quill. She hesitated once more, tears shimmering. I pressed my palm to her back. Sign. With a sob, she let the quill fall across the paper, ink bleeding, blood mingling. The contract was sealed. Her power and her damnation coalesced into one that moment. The city thundered below. Caroline closed her eyes, and I embraced my latest recruit in Hades. Now, dear reader, the world knows Caroline Davis as the unassailable champion of justice, except they don't. Beneath the accolades and the headlines beats an emptiness incurable. She defends monsters, dissolves empathy, wields power like a lethal weapon. Each night, she awakens screaming, haunted by the faces she crushed with imprisonment. And me? I am the devil, aka Lilith Carlyle, her silent partner and the whisper in her nightmares. I did not create her darkness. I only freed it from the confines of this earth. The contracts are meaningless. Her ambitions summoned me long before my first offer. She reached for ultimate power and found the devil waiting. Tonight, she stands before a mirror in a penthouse of glass. Her reflection trembles, eyes hollow. I step behind her, unseen, and brush a crimson strand of hair from her face. She shivers. I murmur, "All worldly things are now yours." She does not protest. The city below pulses with unlimited energy, each light a promise, each shadow a secret. She turns to me, though she cannot see me. "What have I become?" she asks, voice cracking. I press my lips to her ear. "Exactly what you always wanted to be."